Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we'll be looking at and talking about a very large storm system that is going to be brewing across the western United States. This thing will be bringing potentially snow across the mountainous northwest, quite a bit of it in some areas, a massive heat wave, and severe weather. So this type of storm at this time of the year is usually pretty unusual, and but the ingredients have come together for a almost winter-like system in the middle of summer, and the consequences of this will be again very varied. So let's start by jumping just right into it. I want to show you the National Weather Service Weather Ready Nation map, and you can see that we have a bunch of watches and warnings issued everywhere. So the storm system you can see is not contributing to this severe weather across the Northeast right now, but it is contributing to these heat warnings, watches, and advisories across the Dakotas, Iowa. Some of these temperatures here are going to be really high. And the reason why they're going to get so high is because of this massive storm system. You can see Minneapolis right here, St. Paul, 97, 97, 2 to 3 days of 90s. In some areas, it's going to be even longer and a lot more. And then, inversely, you can see that for some areas here across Montana, we will be looking at snowfall, especially the closer you get towards the Canadian border. You can see Glacier. I've been there. It's a beautiful park, 10 to 16, 4 to 8 inches. A massive snowstorm, essentially, for these areas. So, not unheard of, but definitely a little bit unusual, especially given the fact that this system will be producing such a massive heat wave. But again, as I always say, where there's a heat wave, there usually is a inverse cool down going on somewhere across the United States, and this storm is no different. So let's start off by looking at the GFS precipitation graph, and this is basically showing us the accumulation that may happen per hour, millimeters per hour, and it gives us a good look of where the precipitation shield may be occurring. Notice this we do have activity right now across the Midwest and the Northeast, but that's not to do with the system. The system is right here. It's a low pressure beginning to develop across the northwestern United States, and we have a system right there. As you can see, a little bit of that blue dotted line that is indicating some pretty low pressures and cooler temperatures. A 540 line even appearing there, and notice that we see a eruption of precipitation, snow across the higher elevations, and what's more important is we see very strong winds across Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa. And so what this does is we have a low pressure situated right here, which all low pressures have winds that spin counterclockwise. And you can see that this would be funneling the winds towards this way. But that's not enough, because 983, while that's a really strong low pressure for the summer months, it's not quite by itself going to be able to do that. So while it's not labeled here on this map, we do have a weak high pressure system that will be not strong, but what's more important, it will be sitting and be very stubborn. It will be blocking its eastward movement, this low pressure. So instead, this high pressure, that are the opposite of the low pressures, they spin clockwise. So it's creating this classic alley of very strong winds that's transporting all the heat really far north into Minnesota, Iowa. You know, this heat wave is going to extend very far north. It's a northern heat wave. And again, this is something you typically more see with spring systems as opposed to summer storms. Notice that by Friday afternoon, this thing's already well underway across much of the Northwest, bringing rain across Montana, bringing precipitation into the form of thunderstorms mainly, and probably even some derechos across the Canadian-U.S. border. Notice the snow really starts picking up across these mountainous areas as it gets towards the backside of this low pressure. The cold front attached with this system isn't going to be all that crazy at first. It will eventually develop as we get further into the week and the weekend. And the end of the weekend and into the early part of next week. Again, the precipitation shield across these areas is going to be pretty significant, and due to the fact that this is a summer storm, there are warmer temperatures across those areas, and basically that means that any precipitation that falls will be quite heavy, and the precipitation amounts you can see in total precip are going to be adding up pretty quickly. You can see 2, 3, 4 inches, especially across mountainous areas. That could lead to some flash flooding, and of course, where it's cold enough for snow, it could lead to some really heavy snowfall amounts. In some areas, I wouldn't be surprised if the peaks, see up to 4 to 5 feet of snow. More typical again with a strong winter storm. Again, the winds very, very strong across the Midwest and Upper Plains. Southeast will be mainly not really caught in the worst of the heat wave. Again, you'll have that stubborn high pressure. So you can see if we take a look at the temperature anomalies, well, the Southeast is definitely warm, not nearly as above average as this massive dome of high, hot temperatures across Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska. The Midwest, essentially, the Great Lakes heat wave. But notice that the cold air across the West is going to be also very, very cold, which allows for that snowfall to occur not only in the peaks, but some lower elevations that typically wouldn't see snow from systems this time of the year. If you look at the 2 meter temperature shaded, the contrasts are pretty crazy. So this is the heat of the day. Seattle, Oregon, Portland, Oregon, 40s, 50s, while Nebraska and the Midwest is baking in hundreds and 90s. So it's going to be quite the difference. You can see Wyoming, Utah getting pretty cold from frosts nibbling all the way down into the Wasatch. So definitely chilly, chilly temperatures behind this system. Notice though, this system finally moves out into the into the Great Plains, with the precipitation really abating by Sunday across much of the southern southwestern Canadian areas and northwestern United States. What's very interesting is that at this point in the storm system's life cycle, the snow won't be just occurring across the peaks, but across lower elevations as well. And you can see the total snowfall will begin spreading into areas that aren't even the mountains and potentially even lower valleys. That doesn't last for long, though, as again, it would have to take a prolonged cold setup to produce continued snow there. As this low pressure moves into the Great Plains, again, you can see the winds are still relentless across Kansas, Oklahoma, and this also leads to a fire danger because of how strong these winds are going to be here. While there may not be red flag warnings here yet, I guarantee you that by within a few forecast hours there are going to be probably some red flag warnings, because it's just hot and also extremely windy, which is quite literally the perfect recipe for fire. So that is definitely going to be something we'll have to watch for. Notice that the GFS then kind of takes this system and weakens it as it moves into the Great Plains, but it produces a cold front, a meandering cold and slow cold front, which you can see over the next few days, followed by a high pressure from the north, kind of meanders into the middle part of next week, producing showers and storms across a lot of these heat wave stricken areas. So that is the good news. Once this heat wave is over for a lot of these areas, you will be replaced with good potential for showers, storms, and you can see this could last for quite a few days as that heat wave pattern completely breaks down and we see more returning moisture from the Gulf and not as crazy of temperatures. They probably will still remain, I would argue, elevated, and definitely not, you're not going to see bitterly cold temperatures, at least for a prolonged period of time. Bitterly cold meaning, 10 to 15 degrees below average. It's not going to be cold by winter standards, obviously. But you can see Tuesday, Monday, this heat breaks and infiltrates portions of the upper Midwest with cooler than average temperatures. And areas that are hotter aren't ridiculously much hotter, where it's, 15 to 20 degrees above average, more like 5 to 10. More sustainable. And then you can see that the pattern doesn't develop another crazy heat wave, though again it stays warmer, on the warmer side of things for sure. Total accumulated precipitation also, again, once that system and the heat wave moves out and the system moves in, a lot of these areas are going to be dealing with the worst of the heat, end up picking up quite a bit of moisture. So for drought impacts, this should not be a complete and utter disaster. And you can see, based on what the European shows, they are very much in agreement with what the European model, with what the GFS shows, targeting the upper Midwest, Minneapolis, Wisconsin, Iowa, with quite a bit of moisture. And as we extend this even further out, you can see that the active pattern remains across much of the United States without any signs of a massive heat wave building. More of a changeable, variable pattern. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Obviously these heat waves, potentially one you could see again sticking around into more of the southern portions of the Great Lakes and Midwest and a European model. So the GFS doesn't agree to the intensity of that. So there's going to be some differences there we'll have to work out. I do want to show you now the Storm Prediction Center, as once that system moves out into the plains, it will be delivering some severe weather, mainly on, again, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You can see there are no issuances yet, but I'm willing to bet that by the time we get closer to that, there will be watches and advisories set up for storms and whatnot. For now, the risk remains across the upper Midwest, with which is also to do with the system. As if I give you a closer look with the GFS model, prior to it swinging out into the plains, this storm system will be delivering out ahead of this really strong wind from the southwest, and this blocking high that is situated across the southeast. There will be a kind of a ridge that forms, right? And along this ridge, there will be waves and waves of storms that pass through, and some of those will be severe as they have really hot air to the south of them. They'll be on a warm front side of the storm, which again, a lot of folks may think that cold front sides of storms only produce severe weather, but that's not the case. And a lot of these could develop into very fast-moving systems. And again, the potential for derechos is definitely high, and that's what the National Weather Service or Storm Prediction Center is very concerned about. So that is definitely a concern with this storm system. And though within a few days, by Saturday, Sunday, as the system moves further east, this breaks down, and we see a lesser risk of that. But we do develop a pattern of wetness across the upper, I guess a little further south of where it is now, but still the Midwest, northern Midwest. And yeah, the pattern remains very active and turbulent for severe weather. Regarding the heat wave, I want to take a glance at it now and show you a more, I guess, day-by-day breakdown of what's going to happen. For that, we will look at the GEFS, which is an ensemble of models versus just one model. I prefer the GEFS over the EPS, which is the European, because recently the GFS models have been just doing a better job than European. I've noticed this over the last 6 to 8 months. It's just been a better handling with most situations, so I'll show you those. But either way, the European models agree with the GFS ones here. Notice, though, we begin developing that really intense heat across Nebraska, the Dakotas, initially on Friday, before this spills into Saturday and Sunday across the Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio area, northern Ohio. But again, that cold air then inversely moves in across much of the Northwest, and we'll have these dueling air masses. And again, that cold could be pretty darn cold, not just chilly. It could be producing snow across areas that don't typically see it this time of the year. And again, that heat wave meanders further and further east. You could see more into the northeast, and that cool air spreads further and further south, eventually trapping some of that heat across more of the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and Southeast, as opposed to the Midwest and Great Plains. And then we have that cooler pattern developing where we have these storms shooting over and over. That could be a little bit of a flooding threat potentially across Minnesota, Iowa, if we do have trading storms. And in the far range outlook, again, it's a little too far out to predict any particular heat waves. The pattern remains variable. I would say warmer towards the north in terms of anomalies, and probably cooler towards the southern United States in terms of anomalies. Obviously, temperature-wise, it will be warmer towards the south. And I do want to show you across the upper Midwest now and glance and take a look at this with you guys, since the severe weather risk is higher there for the next few days. You can see these little clusters, right, that are sent out ahead of the system on the periphery of this ridge, and the HER model really develops these into big clusters. So tomorrow, or I should say, yeah, early tomorrow in the wee morning hours, it develops a really strong cluster of storms across Minneapolis. Whether or not this develops, we'll have to see. It really thinks it will, the HER model, and then it sends that all the way into, say, northern Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin. So that is definitely something to watch for, and there will just be wave after wave of that across the upper Midwest. You could see another one developing late Friday into early Saturday. The main threat with this will be very strong winds, potentially some hail, and also very heavy rainfall, as the atmospheric content of water will be pretty high. So that is basically for today, guys. I just wanted to give you an update on this storm system. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hope you learned something new, and I'll catch you all in the next episode. See ya.